Hello everybody and welcome to Wednesday's edition of the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. Now I guess we should start with a massive apology. For some reason I've not been following La Vuelta for the past 2 weeks. I just saw yesterday's stage. It's clearly the first stage back after the second rest day, and it's what? What do you mean it started yesterday? Stage 1. That was no. Sensational. No, not my acting. La Vuelta, stage 1. It started yesterday and it started with a bang. Primož Roglič picked up from where he kind of left off almost at the Tour de France. Sepp Kuss certainly picked up where he left off at the Tour de France on super domestique duties. What a stage! It was obviously won by Primož Roglič. He managed to put a second into his GC rivals. He put 4 seconds into a very good looking Hugh Carthy. He put a big dig in with around 2 kilometres to go up that final ascent and tried to break it up a little bit. Unfortunately couldn't. Then once the group had caught him, Primož Roglič hit out and he managed to stay away from the rest of his rivals. Right, leave your comments down below. Cycling historians, have we ever seen such a more epic first day of a Grand Tour, especially when it comes to the GC contention? We've already established team leader roles within teams. Primož Roglič stamping his authority back at Jumbo-Visma. Tom Dumoulin getting dropped. He lost 51 seconds alongside Alejandro Valverde, Gorka Izagirre, Mikel Nevi, David De La Cruz, Davide Formolo, and Guillaume Martin was 1 minute and 8 seconds behind. And then the biggest shock of them all, I don't know, was it a shock? Were we expecting this? Chris Froome lost 11 minutes. Shall I have a little conspiracy? Is this down to the fact that he just can't be asked anymore at Team Ineos Grenadiers? Potentially. We know he's not going to be riding there next year, so why bother putting in the effort? But then again, he is a cyclist, he's an athlete, he wants to win, and you wouldn't think he'd want to go out from Team Ineos Grenadiers by losing 11 minutes in the first stage. I mean, you'd think he'd be back to better form than he actually is. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility. That's not me slating Chris Froome, but we know how good he was. Yes, he had a bad accident, but then again, you know, so did Wout van Aert, and look where he's managed to get himself back to. You'd think Froome would have at least been able to stay with the majority of the peloton up that second, third cat climb before the final ascent in stage 1, but leave your comments down below. Do you think he just thought, fuck it, I can't be arsed with this, I'm moving next year? Or was he going for this brand new Team Ineos Grenadiers tactic of getting dropped and then just being able to go out on his own and get a couple of stage wins? Obviously the team are now going to be working for Carapaz. How long is that going to last? Well, that depends on how long Carapaz actually lasts in the Tour, but it's not out of the realms of possibility for Richard Carapaz to take that victory at La Vuelta. But then again, you look at Primož Roglič, he's looking on fine form, but can he hold it for 3 weeks? I guess we'll find out in the next 3 weeks. Let's move across now to Italy and Giro d'Italia. Stage 16 was a stage for the breakaway. A massive 28 rider group got up the road. The GC contenders were more than happy to let it go, and that was that for the day for them. João Almeida actually managed to put a few seconds into his GC contenders right at the death of that stage, but the stage was won by Jan Tratnik. Ben O'Connor was in second, but João Almeida there, you can see the Maglia Rosa coming in 28th place, just 2 seconds ahead of that big GC contention group. Vincenzo Nibali, Jai Hindley, Dale Geoghegan-Hart, Patrick Conrad, Fuglsang was up there, Kelderman was in there, as was Peo Bilbao and Rafa, Micah and Domenico Pozzovivo and Brandon McNulty. Today's stages will get the results on at the end of the show, but what a day of racing once again. Unbelievable. Leave your comments down below and say whatever you want about those 2 stages of La Vuelta and the Giro. Next up, let's talk about those COVID tests that took place on the rest day. Oh, negative Nancy here was expecting way more positive tests than we had. There was over 400 tests taken and 2 positive tests, one of them being Fernando Gaviria, who tested positive way back in February during the UAE Emirates Tour. He seems to be asymptomatic with it, so he's having no issues. There's also an AG2R staff member. He tested positive and he's been removed and isolated, as has Gaviria. But other than that, everybody else tested negative. Now, this could be down to the fact that both Mitchelton and Scott pulled themselves out after they had 4 positive tests in their team, as did Jumbo-Visma when Steven Kruijswijk got his positive test back. Potentially, these 2 teams could have saved the rest of the peloton. If that bubble had been compromised and it had been one of those 2 teams, then essentially they got rid of themselves, isolated themselves for the greater good of the Giro. You can't help thinking that UAE aren't going to do that. Obviously, they took to the start line yesterday and they'll be seeing it out until till Milan probably now. But yeah, I think had those 2 teams not withdrawn themselves, we could be looking at more positive tests. But luckily, for the Giro, for the riders, for the staff, for everybody involved in the Giro, it looks like there's only 2 positive tests. The organisers, the RCS, have continued to say that they will carry on testing all the way up to Milan, but I think it's safe to say that the race will make its way to Milan now, which is great. We will see an official winner of all 21 stages of the Giro d'Italia. But what's going to happen in La Vuelta? Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that another time. Next up, let's talk women's racing. Over in Belgium was a 3 days Brugge de Panne 1-day race for the women. The winner over the line was Jorien Dora, but as you can see from this, she subtly deviated from her line across to the left in front of Lorena Wiebes. The commissaires handed the victory to Wiebes after they deemed Dora had deviated from her line, which she clearly did. You can see from the overhead shot that she, I mean, it was subtle, but it was enough to just hinder Wiebes ever so slightly and push her into the barriers and cause her to slow up her sprint. Had she maintained the line, however, I think Dora would have probably taken the victory anyway. So a question for you. Yes, it is illegal to deviate from your line. However, if the deviation was like... rules are rules, I get this. But if your deviation isn't intentional and you don't actually hinder somebody's progress, and clearly the progress of that person isn't enough to take the victory anyway, is it fair to then disqualify them? If there was no accident, if there was no real issue, I mean, this one was close. If she'd have just stayed a foot to the right-hand side, potentially she would have been all right, but she kind of deviated a little too far. Do you think the results should stand? I don't know. I don't know. Or is it deviate from your line, expect to get disqualified, end of, don't be a knob? Leave your comments down below and let me know. Anyway, let's get on with today's stages of La Vuelta and the Giro d'Italia. All right, well, stage 17 of the Giro has just finished, and second place rider from yesterday, Ben O'Connor, got in the break this morning, managed to stay away, took a solo victory. What an amazing performance by him. He attacked with 8 kilometers to go. Rowan Dennis initially tried to stay with him. Pernsteiner, he would end up taking second place. He tried to attack. Gap came down to around 23 seconds between him and O'Connor, but it was O'Connor's day. He took victory, 5 hours and 51 minutes. The break established itself relatively early on at 121 kilometers. It had a gap of just under 5 minutes. And one man who decided there was too many people in that breakaway was Dario Cataldo. He put a bit of an attack on with under 75 kilometers to go. He would actually get a gap on those riders in that breakaway. But down to 15 kilometers to go, you can see what kind of a race it was for the GC contenders. João Almeida had 5 of his Deceuninck Quick-Step riders around him, protecting him, and same with Sunweb riders there for Jai Hindley and Wilco Kelderman. Plenty of support for each rider. Kind of explains what kind of a day it was. With 15 kilometers to go, you knew it was a relatively easy day for those GC contenders, and potentially they'd be fighting it out on the final ascent towards the finish line. However, that never materialised. And although Rafa Majka accelerated out of the last 300 metres, everybody was quick to chase him down. No time gaps between any of the GC contenders. One that was missing, though, was Brandon McNulty. He managed to get dropped on that final ascent. He's out of contention of the GC, but it was a pretty boring day in terms of that GC. No one really attacked Deceuninck Quick-Step and João Almeida. João Almeida and Deceuninck Quick-Step were relatively comfortable. But tomorrow, stage 18, we weren't sure if we were going to be going up the Stelvio, but we are going up the Stelvio. And with a potential route change on Saturday, the fact that I think it's the French Prime Minister or President won't allow the Giro to head into France, It appears that they're going to have to change the route, which gets rid of one of the main climbs on Saturday. It appears that the Stelvio tomorrow could be the deciding factor as to what happens in the overall GC. It's going to be it's got to be fireworks. I think a lot of the riders in GC were aware of that, and that's why none of them really put themselves into the red today. It's all going to come down to the Stelvio tomorrow. So expect fireworks, expect some big attacks from riders, and expect Deceuninck Quickstep to be on the back foot for the majority of the day. And how are they going to handle it? They've looked like the best GC team out there so far at the Giro. They've been in control for the majority of the time, but tomorrow all hell could break loose. Fingers crossed. Are we going to see Theo Gegenhardt make his way onto the podium? Are we going to see Wilco Kelderman take that top spot? Are we going to see João Almeida implode? Or are we going to see him attack everybody else and put even more time into the rest of the competitors? Leave your comments down below and let us know what your predictions are going to be for tomorrow's stage at the Giro d'Italia. In terms of La Vuelta, it's currently still going off at the minute, and there's still 50 kilometers to go. So we will bring you all the news from La Vuelta Stage 2 in tomorrow's show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure, if you've not done already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that dislike button if you've disliked the video for whatever reason. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can stay abreast of all the latest news from the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Oh, we're live streaming tomorrow as well. There you go.